Well, I was doing my morning meditations today and I thought to myself, hey, you know what's something we haven't talked about yet? My very first ayahuasca experience, and because a bunch of you had asked in the past, I figured we should pack the bags, go for a walk, and have a little chit chat about one of the most powerful and entrancing psychedelic experiences I've ever had in my life. Now, I definitely don't think that recommending ayahuasca to anyone is a great idea, but for me, I first started studying this stuff when I was like 15 years old. The internet came out, Airwood was pumping with new information, and I was thinking to myself, where are the furthest, most untouched areas of humankind that we haven't ventured into yet? And that's when I realized that we've climbed most of the mountains, we've seen most of the peaks, yet that bridge into reality of conscious and the unconscious mind had yet to really be grasped. So I started studying diligently. I had done a lot of homework on the internet, looking for all the different pros and cons to taking these psychedelics, what to do, who to do it with, how to do it, and what kind of side effects you might be looking into. And that's basically what we're going to take you over today. My first ayahuasca experience, how we got there, and what to be aware of, and what to take into account while doing your trip. So my first time doing ayahuasca actually was 14 years ago, pretty much to the day, give or take about a month or two. I was all the way down in Guatemala, and it had been prepared by one of these relatively well-known shamans at the time. Now, this was actually quite a bit before ayahuasca was a cool thing. The past is always under construction, apparently. So's the future. And this experience had been kind of, I guess, curated by one of the writers of the Vanity Fair and the partner of mine at that time. Now, I've been studying, we've gone over, and it's about a month-long dieta that you end up taking. We're like, okay, I have to eat a pretty strict diet for the next 30 days, so I'm going to make sure that whatever I'm eating fits within this category. Now, there's a few reasons for that. For those of you that don't know, ayahuasca is a brew that contains two specific plants, the most predominantly being the ayahuasca or the Banisteriopsis vine, which is a monoamino oxidase inhibitor. And what that does is it allows your stomach, or it stops your stomach from digesting the dimethyltryptamine, which is found in the other plant known as the charcuna, which is a root bark. Now, the reason why you need to take the ayahuasca and this vine together is because they don't really work one without the other. I forgot my card. So that's one of the reasons why you have to be careful when taking ayahuasca. The monoamino oxidase inhibitor can actually be very detrimental to your stomach. This is why they recommend you don't eat things like chocolate, shellfish, or meat 24 hours before, because even if you were just to take the Banisteriopsis vine by itself, you could end up getting relatively sick, and that would generally ruin your trip. The monoamino oxidase inhibitor turns off your autonomic nervous system's ability to digest things properly. So if you were to drink a coffee and have just taken the Banisteriopsis vine by itself, that coffee is going to be like 400% stronger, because instead of sitting through your kidneys and liver to deal with it and digesting some of the proteins and enzymes and little carbonates, whatever molecules that are in each of these digestives, it goes straight to your bloodstream. So when you take the ayahuasca vine, the Banisteriopsis vine, it turns off your ability for your body to digest the dimethyltryptamine and send it through your kidneys and liver functions. So the reason why they have a diet, and specifically 24 hours before, no shellfish, meat, chocolate, avocados, is because these things can actually be very detrimental to your trip, which is one of the reasons why you might purge more frequently. And the last thing you want to be doing is throwing up violently because you have a bunch of food in your stomach that your body doesn't like. So there it was. I checked a few key things off the list. Number one, make sure you've got a good shaman. Now that ayahuasca has become kind of one of the cool things for people to do, it is a little easier to find out who's sat with those shamans and are they reputable. In the course and duration of all my experiences, I've probably sat over 20 times. Now, I don't suggest sitting that much is beneficial to other people. I was there for the discipline and the practice. At that time, I was actually studying ayahuasca. So I sat myself up in Guatemala with my partner and a well-known shaman in a circle house. And I drank that night ayahuasca more than I've ever seen anyone drink. And what proceeded after that initial, I guess, 3 cups of ayahuasca was one of the most, if not the most intense psychedelic experiences I've ever had. Now, so because I had already done a lot of these psychedelics and I had practiced a bit, I was actually able to go quite far quite quickly. Now, if you've never done ayahuasca before, you might not have the same experience that I did. But what's really interesting and fascinating is that a lot of people have very similar experiences. So about 15 minutes after drinking the ayahuasca, the shaman starts singing these very beautiful songs. They call them ICOs. And I started to drift. I closed my eyes, just sitting up straight, meditative, being like, yeah, I'm gonna be able to handle this. And all of a sudden it was like I was chasing dragons through wormholes. And I started drifting almost like on a roller coaster, like through these different areas of space and time. And as I was traveling, I started to notice what a lot of people call the machine elves. And these are little characters that kind of guard and block different areas of consciousness, it seems. And one of the ones that I had noticed most specifically were these little like shadow workers that would go around, and they were the ones that were like in charge of all the small things that happen. Like there were little beings that would like run up trees. And again, mind you, when I did this, it wasn't the cool thing to do. So you were more likely to end up in a hut outside in the dirt throwing up in a bucket. Whereas now they've got a fairly fancy, like posh rendition of ayahuasca where everyone dresses in white, and it's this very kind of Western made up idea, and it's good for the Westerners. My experience was much rawer than this. Again, 14 years ago was my first trip, so following these dragons, sitting outside in the jungle, watching these little shadow beings walk up trees and like push leaves off. Like they were the ones in charge of making sure that the leaves fell, or like the way when the wind was blowing, oh, we got to push a leaf off the tree. That was like the first maybe 25 minutes of the trip. And then what ensued afterwards was just a relentless deluge of color, sound, and visions. Now, some of the strongest visions I had were, I guess, the realization of that family is really important to me, that I want to have kids. At that time I was living like a pretty big rock star, and I was able to travel around the world and driving really nice cars, staying in really nice homes. And I realized at that moment that I could chase and pursue those things for my entire life and never be fulfilled. But what would fulfill me was my interest in having family, growing gardens, and that became a really strong leader and guider for how I live my life even today. The initial visions that I got from ayahuasca extend probably till the day I die. The reason I went back and studied afterwards isn't because I needed a clear vision of what to do with the rest of my life. It's because I was interested in studying the music, the composition, the structures, the way the shamans could induce particular states of consciousness and really change the world of the things that happen around them. And that's, I guess that's what I noticed the most, is that as we start to dive into the study, the visions that became clear were, okay, first off, here's your like non sequitur human experience. You want family, you want to grow gardens, you want to be in tune and connect to nature. The next thing that became really prominent, and this is probably the last 5 hours of my trip, was just floating through space, watching stars and galaxies be born and die, collide into one another, and the realization that even though this universe is built on like an endless sea of darkness, chaos, and violence, the place where we live right now, this little area and blanket of comfort that we have on this planet, is exceedingly rare for life and consciousness to be able to symbiotically relate to one another this particular way. We know that the universe is infinitely vast to some degree or another, but my visions, at least from the sky high places that I experienced for the last few hours of the trip, those were all showing me how miraculous it is that the body and consciousness have come together in a moment of, let's say, comfort and taste or experience at all. And that most of the universe at any given moment, it's just galaxies colliding into one another, where there is no room for this life that we live now. And that this is a blessed, sacred moment every chance that we get, because in the remnants of time, or the resonance of time, it is not normal that things are this awesome. So there I was, floating in outer space. And now normally at the end of each of these ceremonies, everyone goes through, they say everything they're thankful for, and the group kind of shares with one another. People were getting up and leaving, and I had not even noticed that this was the case. I drank so much my first night that I was no longer aware in any way, shape, or form of what was going on outside of the experience. And that's kind of where you want to be, I think. You want to get to a point, or at least I think, where you have like a blowout experience. Now, all in all, it was about 14 hours I spent floating in outer space after following these dragons through wormholes and seeing the little shadow workers kind of take care of everything. And there was a certain amount of faith, I think, that you have to have. Now, most people don't go that far that quickly. I would attribute some of my ability to go into outer space effectively from the fact that I had been studying, I had taken MDMA, mushrooms, psychedelics before. Right, so to go there now again, it was something I had already practiced and something I was prepared for. If you've never done ayahuasca, or you've never done something like LSD or mushrooms, you're in for a ride that is unexplainable. Now, I'll lace some visuals in here, and I'll make some recommendations, because there is a really, really great documentary, I think, by a gentleman named Jan Kunin. He does a video called Other Worlds, which was done in the early 2000s with one of what I consider the best, if not the best, ayahuasca shaman at the time. Now, he passed away in 2013, and as of late, I have not yet heard any ayahuasca shamans that even come close to how talented this one was. My best recommendation is that an ayahuasca shaman is like the driver, the vehicle is the ayahuasca, and the music is the engine to this vehicle. And the better the music, the better everything goes. And you need all three of these in a really beautiful relationship, I think, to get the best result out of your trip. Now, there's a lot to be said about just allowing things to happen regardless of whatever music or shaman might be there, but they're intrinsically connected. Vibration is extremely powerful. And when you connect vibration to your trip, you get a very colorful and very fulfilling experience based off the music. And as I studied with different shamans over the years, I've noticed that's one of the most important parts about the whole experience is the vibration and the music, because it does something that medicine cannot do, which is enter into the microcosm and touch all the little, what do you call it, like protons or neutrons about you that don't normally get any love. So all in all, my first trip was extremely special. If you're interested in this space, again, this is not for the faint of heart. This is not for people that have schizophrenia that run in their family. There are a lot of negative downsides that can come from playing in this world and adventuring into finding what experiences lie on the abstract fringes of consciousness. But so many of you guys had asked me if I had done ayahuasca before. I thought this was the perfect time to try to jump back into the vlogs and share something that had taken place for me so long ago and been a very, very profound part of my life. Today, even still, a lot of the things that I keep close to my heart, my desire for family, my love for nature and gardens, comes from my experience with these plants. So again, if you guys have any questions or comments, you can leave those down below. The links to the documentary that I like and the other practitioners that I have heard good things from. Those will also be in the description below. Again, remember, none of this is health or psychiatric or psychological advice. You should all do a deep dive into your due diligence for this type of thing, because it is a very serious investment to take into your life. But at the very least, the investment into understanding these things and the ancient wisdom that's held inside of these plants, I think, is beneficial for everyone. So give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We go over lots of random things here. My goal is to just communicate as much value to the Arcane Bear family as possible. And I guess we'll see you guys on the other side.
Miha botana, me mai botana, make botana.
Dramakano abano. Niwata ponda no kuniwata ponda. Nichiyon dana no kuneta babo. No koi jinano eronda me ama que royona ma que royon baina ma que royon baina awe ini canoa Antoninda o cande jin kaine o cabo Inimpaonde no ko inimpaonde paoyon tana paoyon tana King cano Havana, King cano Havana. No coin canora, no coin canora. Matan rondo mayona, matan rondo mayona. Rondo mayon dana, rondo mayon dana. Miang aruba, drama miang aruba. Mabe No conso e canoda mea pada rona pada ronyo vano Kano abano drama kano abano drama kano abano Niwata ponda no koniwata ponda Nichiyon dana no koneta popo